Hello and thank you for joining us at Earth and Glam. Today I will be demoing the marble shine earrings. We'll kick off with pulling out our clay. Today we'll be using Sculpey Primo types of clay, and we will be using a iridescent white and a translucent. Come to find out, my translucent was pretty dry, so we had to work around some challenges today, but stick around and see how we came out with our final product. I begin with cutting off enough clay for what I assume I'll need to create these earrings, and then I begin conditioning the clay by rolling them out on my work surface. A pasta roller isn't required for this design, but good to have on hand. Here's where I began to try to condition the translucent clay, and it all kind of crumbled out. So you'll see some of the tricks we used to get this clay malleable. So the first trick I used was to add some bacon bond to try and add some moisture to this clay. And unfortunately that didn't do the trick this time. So I went ahead and rolled out some of the white into a very thin sheet and began molding the clays. Since the translucent clay was so dry, we didn't have to worry about the white and the translucent becoming too incorporated that the translucent wouldn't marble. And continued adding white clay until I had the clay where I wanted it. You can still see some of that translucent clay marbling. I begin cutting the clay into smaller chunks. The secret with marbling is the smaller the chunks, the more marbling is done. So if you want a less marbled product, do less cuts in this step. And I'm going to go ahead and add some black acrylic paint, some gold flakes, and some additional bacon bond. And we will begin rolling that to make sure the extra items are well incorporated. I broke my pieces into quarters just to make sure I had internal gold and black. And then I rolled and squared out that marble clay. Here I'm rolling out some white to make sure we had a backing to the design. I'm going to go ahead and square this off so we have a good palette to work with. And from here, I cut slices of the marbled clay, and I'll place those slices on top of the palette. Repeating this process until the whole palette's covered. And then an additional step I did for this palette was I took off some small pieces and filled in any open spaces. And then I began rolling out the piece to an even level. And you'll continue using the acrylic roller until you have your intended thickness. And then I'm using 2 different cutters here. I'm trying to get 8 pieces out of this slab, so I go through with a large cutter first. That'll be the bottom piece of our design. And then I go in and get some offcuts with a smaller cutter for the top piece of our design. Now we're ready to transfer the pieces to our baking surface. I'm using a oven-safe glass surface for baking today, but you can use a baking sheet with parchment paper or ceramic tiles as well. And once all the pieces are on our baking surface, we'll bake those pieces at 30 minutes at 270 degrees Fahrenheit. After removing the pieces from the oven and allowing them to cool off, I'm going to go through and sand off the rough edges. You could do this with a Dremel sander too, but these edges weren't too bad. I just wanted to give a final touch. Once the sanding is completed, I move my pieces over to a cardboard surface so I can Dremel holes. If you don't have access to a Dremel, you can add the holes before baking these pieces. I'm adding 1 hole to the larger bottom piece to be suspended by the top piece, and I'm adding 2 holes to the top piece to hold the hook and the jump hoop. I'm going in and adding Sculpey gloss glaze to the top of these pieces. The Sculpey gloss glaze is a really nice product to add a light sheen to your pieces without having to cure. You just have to air dry the gloss for 30 minutes. Once the gloss is air dried, we're ready to assemble our hardware. I'm using 1 larger jump hoop to connect the bottom and top piece, and then a smaller jump hoop on the top piece to connect the hook. Here you'll see I'm adding the larger jump hoop first to attach the bottom piece. And using needle nose pliers to make sure that those are nice and tight. And now I will use my pliers to open a smaller jump hoop to attach the hook. And the final step is to twist the hook to the right position by holding the base with needle nose pliers, and voila, the first earring's done. We'll repeat these steps for the remaining pieces. And once you've repeated all the steps, these earrings are now complete. These are the marble shine earrings that can be purchased on earthandglam.shop. Thanks for joining in today, guys. Bye.